Back in 2008, the entire global economy just stopped. It wasn't a war, it wasn't a plague, it was a financial virus, born from a single, very seductive idea. So today, we're not just telling you a story, we're opening up the case file to investigate exactly how the world was brought to its knees. Our investigation starts right now.
So this is the big question, right? This is the heart of our investigation. The case really kicks off with a paradox. How did the American dream of owning a home, something that feels so right, become the engine for a global nightmare? To get to the bottom of it, we have to follow the money, starting with that massive boom just before the bust.
I want you to look at this. Think of this as Exhibit A in our case. This wasn't just some casual opinion back in the early 2000s. It was treated like an unbreakable law of physics. This one belief, this article of faith, was the crack in the foundation that a multi-trillion-dollar house of cards was built on. Okay, let's set the scene. We're in the early 2000s. The housing market is absolutely white hot. And the message from everyone, everywhere was crystal clear. Buying real estate was a one-way ticket to getting rich. But this dream, it wasn't built on anything solid. It was built on a foundation of sand, just waiting for the tide to turn.
And right there, that's our first major clue. While the whole country was celebrating this booming market, a storm was gathering, completely hidden from view. A storm made of a crazy amount of high-risk debt, specifically these things called subprime mortgages, that was being pumped right into the heart of the financial system.
So, how do you turn toxic, dangerous debt into treasure? Well, you don't. You just make it look like treasure. And that brings us to Wall Street's great magic trick, a kind of financial alchemy. It was this high-stakes performance that promised to spin lead into gold, and it created billions in profit, seemingly out of thin air.
The raw material for this little magic trick was the subprime mortgage. And look, these weren't just slightly risky loans. A lot of them are what they called ninja loans, that literally stood for no income, no job, or assets. They were basically financial dynamite, and the banks were just lighting the fuses one after another.
And now for the trick itself, the collateralized debt obligation, or CDO. Okay, imagine you have thousands of rotten apples. You can't sell them. But what if you blend them all into a smoothie, put it in a really fancy bottle, and call it exotic fruit punch? That's basically what Wall Street did. They took thousands of these toxic ninja loans, blended them all together to hide the risk, and then sold the final package to investors all over the world. So in this whole operation, our investigation points to three main suspects. You had the mortgage banks, the ones actually writing these bad loans. You had the Wall Street investment banks, the ones performing the alchemy. And then you had the supposed watchdogs, the rating agencies. They gave these toxic smoothies a AAA rating, the highest safety grade possible. That seal of approval was the key. It let these incredibly dangerous products infect every single corner of the global economy.
But here's the thing about this magnificent profit machine. It had one critical, fatal flaw. It only worked as long as house prices kept going up. The second they stopped, the machine didn't just slow down, it completely blew up. The first homeowners started to default, and that first domino began to wobble.
The chain reaction was terrifyingly fast. In March of 2008, Bear Stearns, an 85-year-old bank, just vanished and had to be rescued. By July, the mortgage giants Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac had to be taken over by the government. But the moment the world truly broke was September 15, 2008. That's the day Lehman Brothers, a 158-year-old titan of finance, was allowed to fail.
You have to understand, the failure of Lehman Brothers wasn't just another company going bankrupt. It was the moment that the fundamental trust holding our entire financial system together just evaporated, gone. Suddenly, nobody knew who was safe and who was next. The system froze solid, and the panic went global.
And the price tag for all that panic? It's a number that's almost impossible to wrap your head around. The crisis wiped out an estimated $10 trillion in wealth for families around the world. And that's not just a number. It represents stolen futures, retirements that never got to happen, college funds that disappeared, and homes that were lost forever.
Which brings us to what happened next. And this is where things get really controversial. It's often called the billion-dollar paradox. The response to a crisis caused by the financial industry was to save the financial industry. And that created a debate that is still raging today.
On Main Street, the fallout was absolutely brutal.
Millions of people lost their homes, their jobs. It was the worst recession since the Great Depression. But on Wall Street, a completely different story. The very institutions whose reckless behavior caused the whole mess received a $700 billion government bailout. They were declared too big to fail, a decision that, for a lot of people, proved the system was rigged.
Okay, so the bailouts did stop the free fall, but it forces us to ask the single most important question of this entire investigation. What did we really learn? Did anything fundamentally change, or did we just slap some duct tape on a sinking ship?
So what's the verdict? Based on all the evidence, a few things are crystal clear. We learned that making things complicated doesn't make them safe. You can hide risk, but you can't make it disappear. We learned that if the foundation is rotten, the whole building is coming down, period. And we learned the hard way that in today's world, we're all connected. One failure can set off a chain reaction across the entire globe.
And that leaves us with one last, really unsettling question. Sure, new rules were written. Banks were forced to hold more cash. But the fundamental pressure that created the crisis in the first place, that relentless chase for profit and growth, that's still hardwired into the system. So we have to ask, are we just doomed to repeat this?